What if the crop taking up the most space in your garden right now is also the one costing you the most money? Not because it failed, because it succeeded, and you still lost. That's the thing nobody tells you when you first start growing food. You can do everything right. You can water on schedule, amend your soil, fight off the pests, wait out the whole season, and at the end of it, pull out your little notebook and realize that patch of ground produced about $4 of food per square foot. Meanwhile, someone 3 towns over grew something completely different in a fraction of the space, sold it at the farmer's market for $12 a bundle, and reinvested before your crop even finished curing. This isn't bad luck, it's a pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. I've been tracking exactly this: time to harvest, space consumed, market value, repeat cycles per season, and what I found forced me to rip out crops I'd grown for years. Crops that felt productive, crops that looked great in photos, crops that every beginner guide on the internet tells you to start with. I'm going to show you 7 of them, and then I'm going to show you what I replaced them with. But here's what I need you to hold on to before we get into the list. The goal isn't to make you feel like you've been doing everything wrong. The goal is to give you the same mental framework I use now, 4 simple criteria, so that every seed decision you make from here on out is a business decision, not a hope decision. Stay with me through the whole video, because the second half is where it gets interesting. The 4 crops I'm going to walk you through at the end aren't just better, they're structurally different, and understanding why they work will change how you look at everything else you grow. Let's start with the one that gets more beginning gardeners than almost anything else. Number 1. Celery. Here's why people grow it. It's in every recipe. It's one of those vegetables where the grocery store version genuinely tastes like nothing. So the idea of growing something fresh and flavorful makes complete sense. And when you bite into a stalk you grew yourself, it actually is better. I'm not disputing that. Here's the problem. Celery takes between 130 and 140 days to maturity. That's not a typo. In many climates, that's your entire growing window. You're starting it indoors in late winter, babying it through transplant shock, keeping the soil consistently moist, and celery is aggressively particular about moisture, and fighting off early blight the whole time. Then you harvest a head that retails at the grocery store for about $1.50, $1.50, after 5 months of active management. The opportunity cost of that space, what you could have cycled through in that same square footage, is the real loss. That's what people don't calculate. Not what celery gives you, but what celery prevented you from growing. Number 2, cauliflower. Cauliflower is beautiful. That's genuinely part of the problem. It photographs well, it feels impressive to grow, and it has that air of difficulty that makes gardeners want to conquer it. I understand the impulse completely. But here's what conquering cauliflower actually costs you. It's a cold season crop with an extremely tight temperature window. Too warm and the heads button up prematurely. Too cold and they won't develop at all. You get 1 shot per season in most climates. The heads need to be blanched manually, which means you're out there tying leaves over every single plant on a rotating schedule. And after all of that, a head of cauliflower at a farmer's market sells for $2 to $3. Wholesale? Less. The labor per dollar on cauliflower is brutal. It's the kind of crop that makes you feel like a serious gardener while actively working against your bottom line. Number 3, head lettuce. This one surprises people because lettuce feels like a quick crop, and technically it is, about 70 to 80 days to a full head. But the math only works if you're comparing it to the wrong thing. Compare head lettuce to loose leaf salad mix, and the numbers fall apart fast. A head of lettuce gives you 1 harvest. 1. Then it's done. It bolts in heat, it takes up the same space as a loose leaf plant, and it sells for roughly what you'd find on a grocery store shelf. I'll come back to this when we talk about salad mix in the second half, because the contrast is almost embarrassing once you see it. Number 4, onions from seed. Let me be precise here, because this is a nuanced one. Onions from sets, the little bulbs, can make sense in certain contexts. Onions from seed are a different calculation entirely. You're looking at 100 to 120 days, starting months before your last frost, giving them serious indoor real estate during your seedling season, and competing with commercially produced onions at the market that sell for anywhere from 50 cents to $1 each. The people who grow onions from seed successfully are usually doing it at scale, where the math eventually pencils out. At a backyard or small plot level, you're tying up your entire early season for a commodity crop. There are better ways to use February. Number 5, dry beans. Dry beans are one of the most romanticized crops in the gardening world, and I genuinely understand why. Heritage varieties, beautiful speckled pods, the idea of a crop you can store for months. It all feels deeply satisfying. But dry beans require a lot of space to produce a meaningful yield. They need a full season to dry down properly, and the end product, dried beans, is one of the cheapest foods you can buy anywhere on earth. A pound of dried beans at the grocery store costs less than $2. To grow a pound of dried beans yourself, depending on your variety and spacing, you need somewhere between 4 and 10 square feet of prime garden space. If your goal is food self-sufficiency, this math might work for you. If your goal is efficiency, food value or market value per square foot, dry beans are one of the worst performers in the garden. Number 6. Sweet corn. There is almost no crop that illustrates the space trap more clearly than sweet corn. Corn is pollinated by wind, which means it has to be planted in blocks, not rows. You need a minimum of a 4x4 block just to get reliable pollination. The yield from that block? Maybe 15 to 20 ears. One harvest. Corn doesn't regrow after you pick it, and sweet corn retails for roughly 25 to 50 cents an ear. Do the math. 16 to 32 square feet of your best garden space. 3 to 4 months. $10 of corn, maximum. I'm not saying never grow corn. If you have half an acre and you want it for family use, fine. But at the scale most people watching this are working with, raised beds, urban plots, suburban backyards, corn is one of the most expensive things you can grow when you count the space as a resource. Number 7. Storage potatoes. Potatoes are interesting because they feel productive. You dig them up, and there's this moment of genuine excitement. Look at all of these. But potatoes, especially the storage varieties most people grow, yield about 1 to 2 pounds per square foot at best. They retail for under $1 per pound. They require hilling, they're heavy feeders, and they need proper curing and storage conditions if you want them to actually last. Again, if your goal is food production for a homestead, potatoes make a lot of sense. But for anyone trying to maximize value from limited space, they're one of the lowest returning crops you can put in the ground. Here's what all 7 of those crops have in common. And this is the point I need you to lock in before we move on. They're not failures. They're not even bad crops in the abstract. They're low-leverage crops for small space growers. They reward scale in a way that doesn't transfer down. The commercial farmer growing 20 acres of onions has completely different economics than you with your 8 raised beds. When you copy what a large-scale farm grows, you inherit their crop selection without their infrastructure, and the math stops working. What works at your scale is the opposite profile. Fast, repeatable, high value per pound or per bundle, low space requirement. That's the filter. And once you apply it, 4 crops rise immediately to the top. Salad mix. Remember what I said about head lettuce? Here's the contrast. Salad mix, a blend of loose leaf varieties, arugula, spinach, mustard greens, can be harvested in as little as 25 to 30 days from transplant. Not 70, 25. And unlike a head of lettuce, you don't pull the whole plant. You cut it a few inches above the soil and it regrows. You can get 3 to 5 cuts from a single planting before quality declines. Now do the math on a 4-foot bed. That bed, cycling through 3 plantings of salad mix per season, can produce yields worth between $4 and $8 per square foot at current farmers market prices. Compare that to head lettuce at under $2 per square foot. Same space, same water, dramatically different return. The premium market pricing is real too. Pre-mixed salad greens at farmers markets routinely sell for $8 to $12 per pound. That's not niche. That's what people will pay for something that's visibly fresher than anything in a grocery store bag. Microgreens. If salad mix is the most efficient outdoor crop for small growers, microgreens are the most efficient crop, period. They grow indoors or in a greenhouse. They don't care about your climate or your frost dates. A standard 10 by 20 tray produces harvestable greens in 7 to 14 days depending on variety. You can stack trays on shelving units and multiply your growing space vertically, which no outdoor crop lets you do. The price point is extraordinary. Sunflower shoots, pea shoots, radish microgreens, these sell for anywhere from $25 to $40 per pound at specialty grocers and restaurants. Chefs pay premium prices for consistent local supply. And once you have a restaurant account, you have recurring revenue, not one-off market sales. The entry cost is low. Trays, a grow light, seeds, a fan. You can start profitably for under $200. There's no other crop with that combination of speed, margin, and scalability. Cherry tomatoes. This is where I'll lose some people who came into this video expecting me to bash tomatoes entirely. I'm not. But there's a critical distinction. Large beefsteak tomatoes are a commodity. Grocery stores have trained customers to expect them at a certain price point, and competing on price for a large tomato is hard. Cherry tomatoes are different. The right varieties, indeterminate types that produce continuously from midsummer through frost, are something the grocery store cannot replicate. A cluster of mixed heirloom cherry tomatoes, harvested that morning, is a product that has no equivalent on a grocery shelf. It has a shelf life measured in days, which means local is the only way to get it at peak quality. Indeterminate cherry tomatoes also produce continuously, which means your labor of planting them once pays out in weekly harvests across 3 to 4 months. At markets, a pint of specialty cherry tomatoes sells for $4 to $6. A well-managed plant can produce 30 to 40 pints per season. The numbers hold up. Culinary herbs. Herbs are the most underestimated crop in the high-value garden. Basil, cilantro, dill, chives, parsley, these sell for $3 to $5 per small bunch at farmers markets. A 4-inch pot of basil at a garden center retails for $4 to $6. The per-pound value of fresh herbs is higher than almost anything else you can grow. They're also fast. Basil is harvestable in 3 to 4 weeks from transplant. Cilantro bolts quickly, which means succession planting every 2 to 3 weeks keeps you in continuous supply. Chives are perennial. You plant them once and harvest for years. And here's something most people miss about the herb market. Restaurants. A chef who wants consistent, locally grown herbs is a customer who orders every week, 50 weeks a year. One restaurant account for herbs can be worth more than a full season of farmers market sales. Let me bring this together, because the lesson isn't just a list. The 4 criteria that define a profitable small plot crop are: fast to harvest, repeatable from the same planting, high value per pound or per unit, and space efficient enough that you can grow meaningful quantity without an acre of land. Every crop in the first half of this video fails at least 2 of those. Most fail 3. Every crop in the second half passes all 4. The deeper lesson is this: the most impressive crop is not always the most profitable crop. Cauliflower is impressive. Corn is impressive. A row of giant storage potatoes is genuinely satisfying to dig up. And none of them make financial sense for a small space grower trying to produce real value from their garden. Before you plan your next season, I want you to do one thing. Take every crop on your list and run it through 4 numbers. How many days to first harvest? How many times can you harvest from one planting? What does it sell for, or what would it cost you to buy the same quantity? And how many square feet does it need to produce that amount? Write those numbers down. Don't estimate. Look them up, ask around, check what things actually sell for at your local market. Then compare them. The answer will be right there in the data. The gardeners who build something real from their plots aren't the ones who grew the most varieties. They're the ones who stopped farming on hope and started farming on numbers. That's the shift. And if you made it this far, you've already started making it.